Well, I suppose, do you want to wait at all, Sarah, or should we just get started? I think
Up to you.
All right. I think we just get started. Folks can join us, once we get rolling. So, all right, we'll call the September 30th, 2020 Dunn County CJCC Executive Committee meeting to order. And first, the role that we have so far, I think you can see who's on the screen, Sarah. So you'll just know, I think everybody knows everybody. So
yes, got it.
Okay. So, all right. So then we have the minutes of our July 29 meeting. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from the July 29 meeting? Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Okay, and can we, motion made by Mr. Miller, is there a second? Maybe there's
I'll
a second,
second it.
but muted. Okay, seconded by Mr. Bartlett. Okay, so any discussion on the minutes from July 29? All right, then, hearing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed, the same sign. Okay, so the minutes are approved. So we'll move on to the staff report. Sarah?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
we have, as we often find, we with the 1 hour to work with, do we want to consider going straight to the actions first, or is there something in the staff reports we need to hear before taking those actions? Otherwise, I would recommend that we adjust the agenda, take the action items up first so we can get the business done, and then as time allows, we can hear the other stuff.
I would
Okay.
I would actually like to wait for the action items until we have some more folks join us, because it's going to be important that they their voice is heard as well.
That's
Yeah,
a good point.
Yeah, if we have the sheriff and the DA coming on, then I'll just maybe we just wait and
Okay.
plan on at least taking up the action items, around 12:30 when Ms. Corporal joins us, if that works out. But we'll try and get those well before the near the end of the meeting, so we can get to it. Okay, so Sarah, you ready? Go ahead.
Thank you. It looks like we do have Sheriff that joined us as well, so good to have you join us. So staff report, and this will set the stage for the action items in a couple of minutes here. But I'm going to start with the sequential intercept mapping. That technical assistance has been completed. So we had 2 sessions, 2 4.5-hour sessions to really map our criminal justice and behavioral health systems, identify the gaps, and then really we had an opportunity to rank and prioritize those gaps for action items. So the number 1 need that came out of there was affordable housing. And the second need was the crisis system, really something that's closer, more inclusive for law enforcement to take folks as an alternative. So those were the 2 that rose to the top out of that exercise, and that was done under our Stepping Up work group. We are still awaiting the final report, which will have the action items that we were able to talk through, but then also some recommendations for our system as a whole. So once we get that information back, we'll be sharing that with the CJCC and really processing it through our Stepping Up work group. Next item, the Treatment Alternative and Diversion Grant, the TAD grant on the state level, was submitted for 2021. Many of you have already heard through other meetings that we've had that is our last year of non-competitive funding for TAD, but then it'll go back to competitive, where we can increase the amount, do some program changes and other modifications. The state anticipates that funding to be there. It's a good use of funds. There's a lot of cost savings that come with diversion programs. And then the state is also looking at making some changes to the county match. Right now, we have to kick in 25% for that grant. They're looking at removing that requirement in the future, but that still has to go through the process. I was able to present to the state TAD subcommittee on our diversion programs as they're starting to look more towards providing some resources to diversion programs. They wanted to highlight some of the better ones. So we were able to kind of highlight what we're doing here in Dunn County. Looks like we've got Andrea joining us as well. So I'm just going to make note of that. All right, moving on to the grant opportunities. So in short order, we had a couple of grants open up that we've been able to get some side meetings together to formulate a plan. So there's going to be some action items related to these. The first one is the state DoJ COVID emergency grant. So it looks like a non-competitive grant for $58,000 available to counties for COVID-related expenses for that court operations or for law enforcement. So we did have a grant meeting and reached consensus to use that funding towards the court operations in the branch 3 and 4 to upgrade that technology piece. Court sessions are being held remotely by and large, and really we need to have that technology in those courtrooms. Typically that's where we would hold our treatment court sessions as well. And as we know, with just court operations, working under COVID, it's been a little bit more challenging as far as really needing that technology piece. So this is part of a kind of a comprehensive plan that Katie's been working on, and there's many sources of funding for this, but we're looking at contributing that $58,000 towards the contractual costs to get that, get those upgrades in courtroom 3 and 4. So Katie has by and large been working on that application. The intent was really to, since I'm the CJCC has to be part of the application process, and it has to be a collaborative decision. And I'm already in there with some other grants that I would be kind of the point person, but essentially Katie and IT are doing the work of the grant in securing that contract and really carrying out the project overall. We can talk more specifically if you'd like. Katie has a lot of the details, but we anticipate that this would be done relatively quickly by March of next year to really have those courtrooms outfitted with that technology. The grant would go for a year's period, so we have a full year to expend the money, but we would probably do that sooner than later. Katie, anything else that you would like to add on the staff report about the DoJ grant?
Yeah, I was just going to add, we're hoping to have it done by the end of 2020, actually. So I assume we're going to be successful in obtaining the grant. Once we get those funds, we'll be able to pay the contractors. We already have parts of the products coming in, and my office is full of equipment, and other areas are as well. So we'll full bore ahead to get this project going as fast as possible.
Great. DOJ did reach out to me today and asked if we needed more time or had any questions with the grant. And the grant's due on the 5th of October, and we'll be prepared to submit it then. You know, and I kind of highlighted this in some of the county committee meetings, but I'm just really pleased with our nimbleness as a council to really get folks together quickly to talk about these opportunities because they come and go quickly. There's about a 3-week window on this grant. A lot of folks kind of already heard it through the grapevine. So when we were able to get together, you know, and talk it through and reach consensus on how to use the projects or the funding. So just pleased with everybody's participation on that.
Sherry, is that what we need letter of support, the action item on 7A, is that related
Yes,
to that?
yep, the letter of support, just that, that our executive council supports the project to upgrade, to use the funds for upgrading our, to use it towards the court operations. And it really requires that we have all the players here, that we've got the sheriff's buy-in, we've got the DA's buy-in, we've got the judge's buy-in. So this really is the good timing, I guess, having this meeting, and hopefully we'll be able to approve a letter of support versus having to wait for our CJCC, which doesn't meet until November.
Okay.
Second, or the fourth point here on the staff report, and the second letter of support ask is some state funding that came across through our DHS partners. This is for a treatment alternative program. So similar to TAD, but this is coming from the human service side of the state, and they really are asking for 75% of the funding to be used for treatment. Our TAD grant, we cannot use any of the funding for treatment. It's really for those administrative costs of running the program. So the TAP grant they're going to be awarding 4 grants statewide. Based on our county size, we would be eligible for $100,000. We convened a small group to discuss this grant. We had Sheriff and Andrea and Human Services and Arbor Place to really talk through, and DOC as well, just really talk through how we could possibly use the funding. And we reached consensus that instead of kind of creating another program that's a silo or a standalone, or contributing more funding towards what we already have in place with Arbor Place, to really use the funding for treatment needs other than Arbor Place for participants in the variety of programs that we have. So this could be the pre-charge diversion program if there's unmet treatment needs. It could be access to those treatment dollars. For the TOP program, so those folks, typically we try to find, we help people get insurance and have their insurance pay for their needs. But we find when there's mental health and substance abuse needs, that insurance will only pay for one or the other at a time. This would really give us access to funding so we could get people into the treatment that's really warranted through assessments and what they would need to kind of reduce that risk that they have. So we're fortunate to have Arbor Place in our community, but that doesn't meet all the needs that people have. So this would really, the funding would reside in Human Services as it has to with the grant, but it would really be accessible through all the different diversion programs that we have. So we're requesting a letter of support for this grant as well. It closes on December 9th, so we've got a little bit more time to get our proposal together, but Chris Corpola and I are working on that right now. And it does seem to really be a good use of our funds and could reduce some of the county expenses that go towards these programs as well. So that is my staff report, unless there's questions.
I can't see everybody. Are there any questions of Sarah at this time, or maybe save the questions until we get to the action items in the discussion there?
Okay.
Okay, don't see any questions. So we'll move on to, I think what we'll do is just do the update on court planning. I think we can get that done relatively quickly, and
Yep.
and then we can, I think, then move on to the action items. So make sure we get to those and have enough time for discussion. So on the update on court planning, I mean, I'll just start out. I know we had a meeting, Judge Smeltzer and Katie and I and our JAs just a couple of days ago, and Katie was hard at work on developing a new block scheduling plan. And maybe many of you haven't seen our block scheduling plan, even the existing one, but it is somewhat complicated. But as I see it, and correct me if I'm wrong, we'll just have you address that, Katie, in a minute, but I see that we really have 3 overall areas to look at. Number one is how are we going to do our scheduling or intake rotations, and I'll just refer to that as a schedule. And then, of course, we have the issue that's pending, of course, with the budget and the ongoing discussions with the budget. It is how the staff resources will be able to be used to support the courts, all 3 branches. And then, of course, then it's the updates with the courtrooms and so forth. So, Katie, I'll just, why don't you take it away on what you've come up with schedule.
Yeah, so right now our courts function as a 2 on and 2 off intake calendar scheduling. So one of the judges is on intake and the other judge is on non-intake. During that non-intake time, the judge is normally hearing longer motion hearings or jury trials. While the judge intake, they're hearing every single case type, new criminal matters day in and day out. So we're going to try to come up with a calendar that we're going to do 2 weeks of intake and then 4 weeks of non-intake. So our plan is starting in August of 2021. The first week, Judge Peterson will wrap up his intake, and then week 2 and 3 in August will begin our branch 2 intake session, and then the weeks following will be the 3rd branch. So we're going to try to reduce any long hearings from our intake calendar that we currently schedule, and that's going to go to the non-intake time. I'm going to try to plan to have some meetings with the district attorney's office and public defender's office. I've been having communication with child support to make sure that we're cognizant of everybody's, we need more time or less time and what our problematic areas are. We're also going to schedule the family treatment court that's currently scheduled on Monday afternoons on Tuesday mornings before our branch 2 judge. That's going to take place January 1st of 2021. So Judge Snow will have more time for his juvenile cases on Monday afternoons, which is how our current block scheduling is aligned, and family treatment court will start on Tuesdays. He's going to lose a few civil cases on Tuesday morning, but we'll be able to make up for that on the non-intake time. Part of our strategy is so when August comes, that when we're scheduling in March and April, that's when we're probably going to be scheduling for August, September, October, so that our calendar aligns appropriately with having the 4 weeks of non-intake. So I know it's kind of a lot of information. Not sure if there's questions by anybody on the committee.
And I just note that, and you'll have those discussions with our system partners, but I think for the people who use the system, it'll look very much the same. Each week you'll have the blocks, and we'll try to respect the intake time, and it'll just be a little bit more important for attorneys when things are going to be scheduled, that they're available and that we're not conflicting with the intake court. So they'll just see a different judge, be very similar to what it is now, but we want to make sure, and we understand, we understand how the interplay works with the DA's office. So we want to make sure that it isn't making it difficult for them or scattered all over the place. We really believe in this block scheduling, and I think it works pretty well. So it should be very predictable and a smooth transition. Okay, anything else that anybody's interested in today? I think the other thing is we were talking about the letter of support for the emergency funding. We talked a little bit about that, but Katie, you're working hard on that. Anything else you want to say about the courtroom technology?
No, I think most of you have all probably heard this and you're probably sick of hearing me talk about it, but our goal is to get it done by the end of 20. It should not hopefully cost the county any money due to the grants that are available to us through the Routes to Recovery and the Department of Justice grants. So if we can pull it all off, you won't hear me talk about this for a long time because hopefully it's all working successfully.
So will that include moving those electronic stacks away from right next to the judge?
Yes, that will. Yep. Your courtrooms will be rewired and the racks will be relocated in that spare commissioner room. So all of the electronics will be housed in one area. So if we ever have issues and need our vendor to come in, they'll have easy access to that room, or our IT department can access it as well.
Okay, yeah, because that's I'll tell you with remote, all the remote appearances, that is absolutely one of the most difficult parts, where the judge sitting there in the chair and you've got this stack of electronics making all sorts of noise, humming and fans. And then, you know, you get this distortion, natural distortion through speakers. And it's sometimes challenging to hear what people are saying. Now I'll throw a mask on them and muffle them up. And it's really gotten difficult. So that'll be a huge improvement for having remote appearances. So, okay. And then, you know, the budget stuff, that's just an ongoing discussion. And, but I don't think we need to go into that here today. But we will, depending on how things come out with the budget, then at that point, we'll look at how we're going to staff the assistants for the judges and the courtroom, the third courtroom. So, okay, any questions from anybody on, you know, what's going on with planning for that third branch going online? Okay. Well, then I think what we'll do is we're going to skip ahead to then item number 7. We'll come back to the work group reports if we have time, but we'll take up first 7A, a letter of support for DoJ COVID emergency grant funding. And does anybody want to put together a motion for that?
I'll make a motion that we go ahead and send a letter of support for the DoJ COVID emergency grant funding.
Okay, is there a second for that motion?
Second.
Seconded.
Okay, I think Mr. Miller seconded, Judge Smeltzer seconded also. So, all right. So then any discussion on that or the letter of support? I'm just wondering if that would be something that would come from CJCC, the executive committee, or the chair on behalf of the CJCC. Sarah, what do you kind of envision for that?
So I was going to put a letter of support together.
No, Sarah, is that just from the chair of the?
No, I was going to put a letter of support together based on the outline of what we're doing, and then that the motion was approved through executive, and then the first, second, and then list the members of this executive committee. So it would be from me, but it's an action that we're approving essentially.
Okay, any questions? Any further discussion?
I would just add that this will be the first of 2 planned rounds of DoJ funding. So once we do have more details about what that second round entails, we'll be sure to share that as soon as we can. So as other needs arise, there could be additional funding that comes in.
Okay. All right. Any further discussion? All right, then. I think that we're ready to call the question. So all in favor of a letter of support for the DoJ COVID emergency grant funding, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, all opposed, same sign. Okay, so no, passes. So we'll go ahead and Sarah put that together. Okay, the next item then would be a letter of support for the DHS TAP grant. Any motions to support that?
So moved.
Okay, motion by Mr. Miller. Any second?
Second.
Second by Sheriff Big. Okay, so motion's been made and seconded. And any discussion on that issue? We don't have Ms. Corpola here. She'll probably be in about 5 minutes. So you want to put off the discussion on it and move on to the other items, come back to it? Leave it there?
I think we can
we have
move
a
ahead.
parliamentarian?
I would just add that we anticipate the administrative burden to be low on the TAP grant, that it's really access to funding for treatments.
Okay. And is there anything that you can think of, Sarah, that might be, you know, a downside for doing that?
No, no, no. We have, there's more treatment providers out there than people can actually get access to. So I think this will help increase the access to treatment. And then it also provides access to specialized treatment. If there's trauma or PTSD or other specific needs, we'll be able to better address those needs with a funding source. And that can be in county or providers that are within our region as well.
Okay. All right. Any questions or any other discussion? Okay, then I think we're ready for a vote. All in favor of a letter of support of the DHS TAP grant, signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, same sign? Okay, so none opposed, and the motion carries. So we'll put together a letter of support for that. Okay, then the next item is a recommendation for a chair for the Drug Endangered Children or DEC work group. And so I imagine here a motion would be for a particular person to take over that spot as chairman of that committee, is that, or work group, is that correct, Ms. Benedict?
Yes, so currently the DEC work group is chaired by Charisse Nielsen. She is our retired Department of Corrections agent. She had some expertise with DEC, so she helped us get that up and running while she was in her official position. She's since retired from that position and stayed on with us to help to oversee that the unrolling of the DEC program. We've been doing it for getting together for a couple of years now. So Charisse is ready to move on down the line. And we appreciate all of her time and, free of charge. She's not on anybody's payroll. She was just really volunteering to help lead up that work group. But the time has come to look for a new leader for that group, and kind of for 2 months kind of put out the if anybody is interested. There's not a whole lot of people stepping forward, so I did reach out to Andrea Nodoff, our DA. She has been a dedicated member of that work group since the beginning, and asked if she would be interested in leading up that group. And she said if there isn't anyone else, nobody else has stepped forward. So I guess would recommend that we designate Andrea Nodoff as the chair of the DEC work group. And
Okay, so is
Andrea,
there anyone-
anything that you would like to add? So I'm not speaking for you.
No, I think that there's a really good foundation for that work group. I want to see a little bit more of ongoing meetings between law enforcement and human services to actually dig into these DEC cases. But I think there's, a really good foundation, and we've done some good things already. So I look forward to just building on that.
So is there a motion to, would it be a nominate or designate District Attorney Nodoff as the chairperson for the DEC work group?
So moved.
I'll second that.
All right, it's been moved and seconded, and any discussion on that?
I just appreciate Andrea's willingness to take up another thing. And I think she can help really move that work group to the next level. So I think it's just a good recommendation.
Okay, any other discussion? Okay, hearing no other discussion, then I think it's we're ready for a vote. So all in favor of the motion to designate District Attorney Andrea Nodoff as the chair of the DEC work group, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
And all opposed, same sign. Okay, no opposition, and the motion passes. So Thank you, Andrea, for your willingness to take that on. Appreciate that. And you are now the chair of the DEC work group. Okay, then our next item is related to a recommendation OWI forum proposed by the communications work group.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen and show some written detail on the proposal that we'll talk through. Hoping to get a motion on this. So the communications work group, they, at the beginning of the year, we set out the goal of 1 to 2 community forums this year. We had 2 forums last year that were well received and allowed us to have kind of that core group of people go out in the community and address what we're doing with mental health and substance abuse. This year, we are looking more towards the OWI and OWI forum and really want to have more of a campaign with our OWI information that we have. We have posters. We're working on safe ride home information. So all that can be really out there so folks can go out and enjoy a night on the town and have safe options to get home. So the proposal that we put together is an OWI forum, make the safe choice. We're pitching for maybe a late October, early November, ahead of the holidays. It would be a YouTube or Zoom platform where we would have Facebook Live. So there's no kind of community location or no transportation issues there. Certainly it's, you know, due to COVID is why we're going to a virtual format. We're looking, proposed time of day would be kind of late afternoon or evening time. Our intent here is to try to reach the public and to engage them. So we wanted to make it an opportunity that people can actually watch or they can watch later on and also submit questions. We thought for this forum that law enforcement representative would be important, a judge, prosecutor, and then a treatment representative. So I guess my recommendation would be for Sheriff Big to do that versus just you know, Menominee PD, because I think the OWIs affect everybody in the county. So I think it could be a good opportunity for us to address, you know, outside of Menominee as well. Judge Peterson as chair of the CJCC certainly has an opportunity to be part of it. But, you know, this is just a proposal, so anything's up for modification or adjustment. A prosecutor, so it would be nice if Andrea would be willing to be part of this, and then somebody to speak to that treatment side or more of that behavioral health side. So whether that's a representative from Arbor or maybe even Chris, because Chris has a nice way to do plain language information too, to really convey. So we wanted to keep the speakers to a minimum. So 3 to 4 people for the speakers. We would have a moderator. We would have somebody watching the Facebook for comments and questions. So we would pull in IT as well as they supported us in the past. The content we're looking at would be, this would be no more than an hour, but for all of the content and questions, but really looking at highlighting some of our data that we've been looking at through the data work group. This has been the driver really behind our alcohol initiative and just what we're seeing in the criminal justice system. So we do have, you know, drugs and alcohol seem to be the 2 dominant drugs of choice that really drive some of that crime activity that we see. So we wanted to share some of the information. It's really compelling when you look at the age of the people, the level of intoxication, and then we are digging into more of the dynamics of the time of day, and some other factors there too. But the presentation would really kind of frame up of why people should care, why we care, and then, really highlight some of the processes when it comes to an OWI. So how it affects people's lives. So the intent here is to provide education and transparency. So really kind of walk through the process, that prosecution side, and then all of the costs. So we know that there's financial costs, there's indirect costs with people's employment, loss of driver's license, there's treatment requirements if they need assessment, IID, and that we know that maybe our first OWI is a citation. It ramps up quickly, and there are still significant repercussions for that first OWI, and that we know that subsequent OWIs can lead to a prison sentence and lifetime revocation. And when we talk about a community like ours, where your transportation is your economic viability, that's a huge impact that people have with OWIs. So after the process, we wanted to talk about some of the resources and options available. So this is where we wanted to tie in with the information campaign that we're doing to make a safer choice and those repercussions of an OWI. It's a completely avoidable offense. And the goal is that we want to have a safer community. We want to provide options for people so they can really never get an OWI. And then, ultimately, it's part of it is trying to change that culture where drinking heavily is permitted or not necessarily not socially unacceptable. So it's starting to kind of change that culture through education and transparency. So this kind of hot off the press, we just discussed this at our Monday's communication work group. But we're really looking for, I guess, the green light from the executive committee to continue planning and get some buy-in from some folks so we can really nail down a date, nail down a time, and then really get our content more honed for those that would be presenting. So now I'm going to just kind of turn it over for conversation to the group.
Okay, yeah, any discussion of this? I know one thing, I can't do it on November 5th or 6th if I'm involved, but I'd be happy to be involved any other dates as we, unless it conflicts with court, time.
I guess my only question is how highly viewed were our meth ones that we did? It didn't seem like they were really worth our time. We probably had more Facebook viewers, but the one we did in Boyceville, we had maybe 10 people there, and 5 of those were, one of them was Judge Schnelzer and some other people involved in the system, so I guess I'm not opposed to doing it, but is it worth our time?
So just to answer your question, right, we didn't have as many people in person with those sessions, but some of the preliminary data came out, showed over 800 people viewed those sessions, the one in Boyceville. So we could probably get updated numbers on that. But, and I think that's why it lends itself more towards a virtual forum where people can, be in the comfort of their own homes or wherever to actually participate and get that information. It didn't seem like the in-person sessions were as much worth our time. But when we got that electronic, that reach on the internet, that to me was worth the time. But we can look more at that reach that we had.
All that I would say about that is I think honestly OWIs are a little sexier than methamphetamine. I don't mean that. I mean, I say that sort of tongue in cheek, but I mean, I think the average person's like, I'm not going to use meth, but it's difficult to find someone in central Wisconsin who hasn't driven after they've been drinking.
That's a good point, Chris. It might be more relatable to everybody, and that everybody could benefit from it, whether it's, it could be a preventative message, but it's also a message for those that are, potentially involved, that the stakes kind of ramp up quickly. And it's not just a ticket and you're going on your way, that there's serious ramifications to drinking and driving.
And it never hurts to point out to the community at large that meth is a real problem. A lot of people, Chris, you're absolutely right. They're not going to be inclined to use, but they also don't have a clue what an impactful and serious problem it is we're dealing with right here in our own backyard.
Yep.
And when we're talking about OWIs too, it's, as you know, Sheriff, it's not just the alcohol, it's drug driving too.
Right, and I think it would be eye-opening for people to realize how many arrests are made in the middle of the day.
Absolutely.
Under the influence of methamphetamines.
I think if people do tune in, they'll be blown away by some of the data because it blew us away.
This would be available as a recording on the website or the YouTube channel as well. So if someone wanted to watch it at a later time.
Mhm.
One thing I think is it's really a good idea to, let people know what the consequences are, and promote that, because, pretty stiff. You get to be a fourth. Again, that's, a lifetime revocation. And, so often these people, they aren't aware of actually what the law is, but on a fifth offense in a lifetime, you could have 2 OWIs in 1989, 2 OWIs in 1991, and then go without for almost 30 years. And then you may be 0.05, and you're looking at mandatory 18 months in the Wisconsin prison system. So I don't think a lot of people really understand that. And and sometimes people don't really understand that it can be, other substances, restricted controlled substances, but just getting the word out there, if it prevents a few, it's probably worth our time, so, but I'm all for it.
And I'm happy to participate as well, as long as it works with, I don't know, not in a trial or anything, so.
Okay, do we want to, any further, well, we're kind of discussing it before someone makes a motion. Anyone want to make a specific motion on this?
I would so move that the executive committee support or whatever endorse a community forum via virtual forum on OWIs.
Okay, any seconds to that motion? Judge Smeltzer, you look like you're going to say something there. Can I get a second?
If you need a voice, I can second it.
Okay, so motion's been made and seconded. So any further discussion?
No, I guess we can talk about getting used to these Zoom meetings, but a forum may be an additional challenge, an additional hurdle. If we're not in the same room and we're sitting in our own office, to put on a forum from a Zoom standpoint may be a challenge and awkward, but I'll give it a shot.
Okay.
And just to provide a little bit more detail, Menominee PD had a couple of forums that went quite well virtually. I do believe the people were in the same room, but 6 feet apart. But we would work through those details, and Brenna does have some experience doing that, and it went very well. So I think we wouldn't be as green maybe as we think we would.
Yeah, I mean, I think we could actually have, you know, there's not as much material out there for people because of the COVID. So I think there is maybe a little bit more interest in this sort of thing. And there's always somebody that's interested. And and word spreads around. So, okay. Are we ready to vote on that? Okay. All in favor of a motion to support holding a community forum on OWIs indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
I,
Okay, any opposed, same sign? Okay, none opposed, motion carries. So then we'll work out the logistics at a later time. All right, so we're at 1:45. We'll go back to the various work group reports. And unless you want to talk about a next meeting date before someone has to go, does anybody has to leave right away? Maybe what we ought to do is just do the next meeting date, so we know that if someone has to take off at 1, I know I'll have to be close to 1. So will that October 28th at noon, will that work? Anybody not? So we'll just set it for that date. Looks like everybody's good with that. Okay. And then our CJCC, the larger meeting is set for November 12th, our last meeting of the year for that at 4 p.m. Anybody have any problem with that date? Okay, so,
May or may not be available for that.
okay. Anybody else? That's one of those Thursdays? Well, it says Thursday right on it, so I assume it is. Okay, all right. Well, we'll just plan on having those dates for those, and we'll go back. Is there anything then, and back to item number 6. And I don't know, Sarah, do we want to just quickly go through of just maybe update us in terms of, you know, what groups are meeting and maybe the things they're working on?
Sure. A written report was provided in the packet, work group activities. So they are all up and running or scheduled to be up and running, including our treatment court advisory group, which hasn't met in some time. Some work groups have been meeting more frequently, like evidence-based decision making. We've had several side meetings and participation from some folks here that are part of this group as well. So exciting to really, we reached consensus on expanding the pre-charge diversion program, the offenses. There's buy-in from our law enforcement, from our sheriff and our chiefs for more law enforcement-led diversion. And we're also putting together training on the proxy tool. That's our data collection tool. It's also a decision-making tool for law enforcement. And that's that mechanism that folks get into the pre-charge diversion program. So just really excited to have some progress there. So we're working on putting together some training for folks on those pieces. Also add the deck work group has been meeting. As Andrea kind of talked to a little bit, we've been spending time kind of dusting off a little bit, making sure that MOU's up to date, working on a web page so we can really profile the deck process that we adhere to, working on some public service announcements for education of not only our internal staff, but just the general public. We've had, all agencies have had staff turnover. So as we've done some of the major trainings in the past or at the beginning of the year, like when law enforcement have their in-service, typically we go and train on some of these programs or the processes that we have. But those opportunities once a year really aren't sufficient for law enforcement training. So we want to have something that is ready to go. And when there's a new officer on board, they can really observe that training piece right away. So we're not having to wait. They're not in the dark on any of the processes. And we don't have to wait until we can see each other again in an actual room for training. So those are moving ahead. EBDM's also spending quite a bit of time talking about that juvenile side of the house. That's led up by Chief Atkinson. So he's that Project Hope, and one of the main pillars is really more juvenile deflection and diversion. Also looking at the truancy process. So he's kind of getting some buy-in for some additional meetings with partners. Let's see, the Stepping Up work group, that work group's also kind of reconvening. As I mentioned with the sequential intercept, that those results will certainly be part of our discussions on stepping up, but really started talking about some of the quick wins that we can accomplish this year. So we are looking at the medically assisted treatment, education, and possibly piloting something in the jail there. And that we're also monitoring a reentry program, and then putting together some proposals for training for correctional officers. That work group's moving ahead. So I'd be happy to address any questions that I spoke to or didn't speak to in the written report.
Anybody have any questions of Sarah regarding the work group activities going on?
Or if anybody else wanted to have any comments that I know some of our folks participate in those work groups as well, or
Anything anyone would like to share?
What I would say is maybe this is redundant to this group, and I don't mean it to be that or to be patronizing to things that you don't already know. But Sarah and I have been working on a grant, a DHS grant for treatment, some treatment money, and in putting that together, and you start to look at the kind of the collective history of this group over the last 12 years. And you look at what's been accomplished, and you know, I probably won't catch them all, but you look at everything from the development of the CJCC to the development of treatment court, and then family treatment court, pre-charge diversion, the TOP program, what am I missing? Deferred prosecution and deferred acceptance of a plea program. And then as well as just some of the work groups that they've accomplished, a lot of training across the system, and collaboration and working together. And it's pretty impressive when you start to look at the collective total of what a county our size, we're pretty small potatoes for the in terms of what we've been able to pull off and do, and I think it's pretty cool.
Very proud of our county. Very good things we've done here. So any other comments? Okay, well, we're just shy of 1 o'clock. Anyone object to adjourning? No objections. Okay, then this meeting will be adjourned, and we'll meet again on October 28th, and then our CJCC meeting November 12th. Mark your calendars, and have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Adios.
Thank you. Bye-bye.